I want to thank you for taking some time out of your afternoon to talk about note-taking for online classes. This is going to be just a very brief, probably 15 to 20-minute presentation all about note-taking for online classes, where we'll talk about, of course, the benefits of taking notes in your online class. But then I also want to talk about different note-taking formats that you may want to try out, a little bit of trial and error this summer as you do prepare for the fall. And then also some online applications or websites that may be useful if you are thinking about taking notes in your online class, especially if you're planning on typing those notes. Before we do get started, I want to introduce myself for those who do not know me. My name is Sam DeZerga, and I'm an academic success coach over in the Learning Commons. If you have any questions after this presentation is complete, you're welcome to send me an email, call me on my office phone, or I even have a text number if you want to just send a quick question over text. But just to give you an idea, my role as academic success coach is to provide support to students in pretty much any way that I can to help them succeed, whether that is connecting them with tutoring services so that they can get the content help that they need in their classes, or helping them advance the college success skills that they need to advance both in and out of the classroom, such as note-taking. I want to start off with the basics, the why should I take notes? Because I've heard from many students over the years that they don't take notes, or if they do take notes, it's only a few notes, maybe a few lines during class, and that's it. So I want to talk a little bit about the why. Why should I take notes? And first, I wanted to start off with this idea that the benefits of note-taking are going to outweigh the perceived negatives of note-taking. And I want to focus on the perceived negatives of note-taking here for a moment. So if we think of the lecture is too fast, and so how can I keep up with the lecture and also take notes at the same time? Well, there are other ways that we can think about this as well. Another perceived negative is notes are already provided for this class, and so why should I have to double up and take notes again if I'm already provided notes? And this is something that is very common in math classes. Others find that it's hard to pay attention to their class while they're taking notes. And then, of course, there's always going to be that idea of this is an online class. And so either lectures are recorded, or I have a video, or I have a study guide, and it's all there on Canvas. So why should I have to take notes if it's just an online class? And I want to go ahead and take a look at all of those benefits so that we can really understand how note-taking can help you succeed in not just your online classes, but your Zoom classes and also on your in-person classes as well. So overall, there are benefits to note-taking on your own learning. So number one, note-taking is shown to improve your focus and attention to detail. It also promotes this idea of active learning. We can think of learning as being either active, so you are playing a leading role in your learning, which note-taking can help you out with, or you can take a passive role in your learning. So passive learning, think of this as just sort of sitting back in class and just listening, just passively taking in the information instead of actively using that information in some new way, such as note-taking. Note-taking can also increase your critical thinking skills. Usually while you're taking notes and listening to a lecture, the wheels are turning in your head. You are connecting that new information to things that you may already know. And it also helps boost your comprehension of the material and helps you later recall that information when you go to take an exam. But it also helps to advance other skills that can help you in the classroom and outside of the classroom as well. So note-taking can help teach you prioritization skills. So being able to prioritize knowing exactly what to put down on paper instead of just writing everything down at once. It can also improve your organization skills, staying organized, not just on the paper, being organized with your notes, but then what do you do with your notes afterwards? Are you shoving them into a backpack and just going on with your day? Or are you organizing them in some way that makes sense in chronological order in a folder, notebook, or binder? And then note-taking can also help boost your creativity. So depending on the way you decide to take notes, there are many visually creative ways to use your notes. And so those are just 3 other skills that you can really boost if you decide to take notes in class. Very briefly, wanted to touch on the question of whether you should handwrite your notes or type your notes. And the decision is really up to you, though the research does favor handwritten notes. So there was research to show that handwritten notes were typically higher in quality, that students that took handwritten notes often performed better on tests. And then afterwards, they usually retained more concepts than students with typed notes. But I think this really comes down to the way that you take notes and also how you use those notes afterwards. So as we get towards the end of the presentation, when we talk about online tools for note-taking, I want to touch upon some things that you may want to consider before typing your notes. Ultimately, it's your decision. While the research says that handwritten notes are, they win out over typed notes, that does not mean that typed notes do not have their own benefit. So let's move on to methods. So which method is going to be best for an online class or any class in general? So we're going to take a look at a few note-taking styles. The first is going to be the outline method. So you can think of this as being your traditional note-taking method with headers and bullet points. You've got your title, your header or subject, and then key terms or examples, descriptions underneath it. It looks kind of like this image here on the right. There are some pros and there's some cons with this type of note-taking style. So some of the pros are that you can capture a lot of information with this note-taking style. It's typically the easiest. It's typically the one that students sort of default back to when they start to take notes. And then when these notes are well organized, when they're done correctly. And that sort of leads to the cons, is that you really need advanced prioritization and organization skills in order for these type of notes to be done right. And also, depending on the amount of information that you're writing down in the outline method, it can also be time consuming. A very common way that students take notes in the outline method is that they'll break the textbook out, they'll write down the headers, and then they'll have their bullet points underneath with what they believe to be the most important information. Well, if those prioritization and organization skills are not advanced enough, then you may end up writing down way more information than you actually need. You want to focus on things like key terms, main ideas, these overview type concepts, and that takes, of course, critical thinking, advanced prioritization skills. The second is, and if you've taken a college success class, you've probably heard of this, but the Cornell note-taking system. It is a 2-column format that focuses on the 5 R's of note-taking. That is to record, reduce, recite, reflect, and review. And any good note-taking method is going to follow those 5 R's. And once again, there are some pros and cons to this method. So pros can include, helps keep your notes organized. It creates a natural study guide for you. So in one column on the right, you'll have all of your notes as you'd usually take them. And then on the left, it's almost like a built-in flashcard. You can fold it. You have your cues in the left column or questions that may be asked on the exam. And you can almost fold it over, ask yourself the questions, and then flip it around. There's the answer. Great built-in study guide. And then it can also help you identify not just questions that you think are going to be on the exam, but then what questions do you have? It allows this piece at the very bottom for reflection. What summarizes this sheet of notes and what questions do I have? But of course, there are some cons as well. So one, you really have to follow the lecture very closely to be able to take notes in this style. And it also requires some work after class. So you may have taken notes during class, but after class, you sort of have to go back to it so that you can fill out the left column and the bottom, which may take some more time. There's also a modified Cornell system for math classes that I wanted to bring up here. And it's a note-taking method that really focuses on learning the process of completing a math equation instead of just memorizing how to do something. So focuses on the process, not the product. And you can see an example of this here on the screen now. Some of the pros is that it helps keep your notes organized in math. You could just flip open to a page of your notes in your math class and know exactly what you're looking at. It also helps by turning numbers into words. I hear time and time again from students who say that they're not the greatest at math. Sure, they can do it. Maybe it's not their best subject. And they favor subjects like science or English or humanities, or they really enjoy reading. And this will help turn those numbers that you see in math class into words by allowing you to write out the step-by-step process it takes to solve an equation and making connections with arrows. Once again, it helps you learn the process of solving an equation. And by having that bottom space, you can identify challenges that you may have and really identifying where that challenge is coming from. So instead of saying, I don't understand this formula, you can say, I don't understand step 3 of this formula. Some cons, of course, pros and cons for all of these methods. Oftentimes in math classes, notes are provided. And so then it's hard finding the value in taking a more detailed notes in class when you've already provided notes. It also requires that work after class for that reflection and can be time consuming. Concept maps are another great way to think of taking notes. It's a way to visually organize the material by connecting a main idea to general themes within class. And some of the pros is it's great for visual learners. So if you find that you are more visual instead of auditory or kinesthetic, then creating a visual concept map might be for you. And it also helps you to easily make connections between things that you're learning in class. The concept map here on the right starts with the center, which is DNA, and then branches off into the function, into the history of, into research. And it allows you to branch it all back to the main concept, the main idea, which is DNA. But it also requires that you have some sort of primary note-taking method. So once again, it's got that time-consuming element. Usually students will take notes in, say, an outline format, and then after class, they'll create their concept map. And then something else that I wanted to bring up is that not everything can always be represented visually. Not everything has a connection to something else. And so it may not work for all classes. The last method I want to go over is annotation. And this is the idea that you're taking some sort of pre-existing materials, such as the PowerPoint presentations for a class, or if you're given class notes, the class notes, to make comments and really expand upon that knowledge. And so in this type of note-taking style, you would print off the PowerPoints or print off the class notes, and you'd take your pen, your pencil, your highlighters, your sticky notes, and you would, underline, make notes in the margins, highlight the main ideas, and really become familiar with those notes or the PowerPoints, making comments along the way. Some of the pros is that you're using the pre-existing materials that are already available to you. This is probably very common in online classes where there's likely a PowerPoint that you're following along with, or class notes, which are very common in a math class. And then it also allows you to make connections to things that you already know. So if you're reading something in the PowerPoint and it kind of reminds you of something else you've already learned, you go ahead and just write that down in the margins. so that there is that natural connection between something you already know and something that you're learning in class. Some cons, though, is that not every class is going to provide PowerPoint slides or class notes. And so this might not work for every class. And then it can also be time consuming. Ultimately, though, the choice is yours because there are pros and cons to each note-taking method. But remember, all of the positives outlined, all of those pros outweigh the perceived negatives, so all of the cons. So you really can't go wrong. Now let's go ahead and transition into those online tools. There are 2 digital tools and websites that I think that every student should know about if they decide they want to take notes in a digital format. But before you jump in to taking notes online or through some sort of online tool, there are 3 tips for typing your notes that I wanted to mention here. The first is you really have to think as you type. For many people, they can type without really thinking about what they're typing. And so it's important to really read through every word that you're typing, really think about it. Don't write down every word or don't type down every word that you hear. I remember, I'll sort of tell a personal story here, but I remember taking a class many, many years ago, and I decided I was going to bring my laptop to class and I was going to type my notes. Well, instead of truly listening to the lecture, I spent more time typing down every single word that the professor said, because I thought if I could do that, and it was a difficult topic, it was a philosophy class. I thought if I could do that, then I can go back and I could read through those notes and try to make more sense out of it. While I was losing out on that great lecture time, instead of really paying attention, I was just passively typing those notes out. And it really didn't work out in the long run. From there, you really want to think as you're typing, paraphrase what your professor is saying, or paraphrase or shorten, condense what you're hearing in class. And then make sure that you're also using those notes after class. Don't just type them and forget about them and never go back to them. Related to thinking as you type, you want to slow down. Make sure you're not writing down every word. Make sure you're just putting down the key points, key terms and definitions, any main ideas or good examples. You don't have to write everything down, and you certainly don't have to type everything down. And then lastly, what's more important than the way you take notes, whether that is Cornell, outline, concept maps, annotation, handwriting your notes, or typing your notes, what is most important is that you are using those notes in some way after class to study. So I always give students the tip that if you can organize your notes in chronological order and then go through them for maybe 20 to 30 minutes, at least once a week in the lead up to an exam, then you're probably in really good shape. Then once you do reach 1 week before an exam, ramping that up a bit, maybe pairing it with another study method. But make sure you're reviewing those notes once a week and practicing. So let's jump into those online tools now. The first is Evernote, and this is a website where you can easily take and store your notes. There are many different templates available. There is a way for you to take outline style notes. There are Cornell style notes on this website, or there are so many different templates, hundreds of different templates for taking notes. And it can be stored very easily on the website, which is Evernote. There are a lot of tools available. You can attach PDFs or videos or audio, any materials that are available to you in your class, you can attach very easily in your notes. Very similarly, if you don't want to use some other website to store your notes, something that TCC provides to all of their students is access to OneDrive. And this is something that is available to you through your email. So if you were to log into your TCC email and then select those 9 boxes in the top left corner, you'll see a drop down and it will show you all of the Microsoft apps that are available to you online. You're probably very familiar with the Microsoft apps of Word and PowerPoint and Excel, but ones that you may not be familiar with. One in particular is called OneNote, and that's the one that I'm going to talk to you about here today. OneNote allows you to type your notes. You can attach drawings. If you're on a tablet and you have the stylus pen, you can draw right on the notes. You can attach screen caps from videos or websites. You can also attach those PDFs, audio, video, pretty much all of your study materials stored in organized notebooks. And that's something that I really enjoy about OneNote, is that it allows you to create different notebooks for different classes, and then almost creating different tabs within that notebook so that you can further organize your notes. And I created just a very rough outline of what this could look like, but we see up there at the top, this is my notebook for BSc 2085, the Anatomy and Physiology 1 class at TCC. You can find that along the top. Then on the left, I have the different tabs for my notebook. I have Module 1, Module 2, Module 3, and Module 4. Well, each tab also has notes within it, and I can title those notes and keep it really organized. So it's something that you have access to for free as a TCC student, and I think it's a tool that not many people know about that I think they should take advantage of. And that's all I have for you today. I want to thank you for joining me. If you have absolutely any questions, whether that be about note-taking styles or even going through your notes and seeing how you can enhance your note-taking, then I'm happy to do so. You can reach out to me. Once again, my name is Sam. We've got my email address and phone numbers here on the screen. And once again, thanks for coming.